My name is Camila Smith, and I was raised in the bustling world of sports nutrition, where my parents, the founders of Smith Nutrition, taught me the ropes. Despite our family's wealth, my upbringing was anything but pampered. My father instilled in me the importance of diligence from a very young age. I vividly recall my first day at the office. I was just 8 years old, donned my favorite blue dress adorned with tiny flowers, trying to appear as professional as possible. "Camila," my father said as he set up a small desk for me near his, "one day, all of this could be yours, but you'll have to earn it, just like I did." These words profoundly shaped my upbringing. Unlike other kids who enjoyed their summers poolside, I was busy learning about inventory management and customer service. My mother occasionally fretted that I was missing out on a typical childhood, but I cherished every moment at the company. It became my second home. College sped by in a flurry of business courses and internships at my father's company, where I worked from the warehouse up, with no exceptions. The long-standing employees, who had known me since childhood, respected my dedication to learning the business from the ground up. Post-graduation, I immersed myself in the company, my days filled with back-to-back meetings, detailed reports, and strategic planning sessions. Romance was an alien concept. My college roommate, Malaya, often teased that I was wedded to my work. Everything shifted during our company's annual holiday party. I arrived late, having stayed back to finalize some quarterly reports. When I entered, the party was already buzzing. That's when I met Liam from our Oklahoma City branch. He was tall, with inviting brown eyes and a smile that washed away the weariness of a 15-hour workday. "You must be Camila," he greeted, offering a handshake. "I've heard a lot about you." We spent the evening discussing work, our families, and our aspirations. Liam seemed to understand me in a way no one else ever had. When he asked for my number, it felt like something clicked into place. Following that night, Liam and I kept in touch constantly, starting each day with his "good morning," beautiful texts, and ending them with long calls. Despite the distance, our connection deepened. One evening, after a particularly long video chat, I suggested, "Why don't you transfer to the main office? It would be great for your career, and we could be together." There was a pause before Liam gently declined, citing his close-knit family in Oklahoma City as his reason to stay. Disappointed yet understanding, I contemplated his counterproposal, relocating to Oklahoma City myself. After mulling it over for a day, I approached my father for advice. Explaining my situation and introducing him to the idea of Liam, I was surprised to see a smile spread across his face. "I was wondering when you'd ask," he remarked. "Liam has a solid reputation, and the Oklahoma City branch could indeed benefit from your leadership. If this is what you want, I'll make it happen." Moved by my father's support and excited about this new chapter, I realized that sometimes taking the path less traveled could lead to the most rewarding journeys. 3 weeks after my decision, I found myself in Liam's Oklahoma City apartment, navigating through a sea of moving boxes. "Welcome home," he greeted, his arms enveloping me warmly. Standing there, I felt truly at home, certain that I was right where I belonged. The opportunity to meet his family came quicker than I anticipated. They all lived under one roof in a modest 2-story house, his parents, Benjamin and Carla, his sister Willow, and her teenage son, Dylan. The nerves kicked in as we approached their home. Carla's first words as I entered were, "Your family must live in a mansion. This must seem so quaint to you." I could feel my cheeks redden with her remark. "Oh no, not at all," I hurried to explain. "We've always lived quite ordinarily, no mansions or private jets." "But with your family's wealth," Benjamin began. I cut in, "I've worked for everything since I was young. My dad instilled the value of earning your keep. Honestly, I'm more at ease with simpler things." I noticed the slight looks of disappointment they exchanged, but I chose to ignore them. Willow, eyeing my simple sweater and jeans, remarked snidely, "If I had your money, I wouldn't be caught dead in anything but designer labels." I just shrugged, unsure how to respond, while Liam, squeezing my hand under the table, remained silent. 3 months later, Liam proposed during a simple walk in the park. It was a modest affair, just the two of us, a plain ring, and a sincere proposal. I said yes, without hesitation. However, when it came to wedding planning, we faced our first major disagreement. Liam envisioned an opulent wedding, a large venue, hundreds of guests, the full works. Babe, we don't need all that, I argued. Let's have something small and meaningful. He reluctantly agreed, and we had a modest ceremony with just immediate family. Yet, during the reception, I overheard Carla whispering to her sister, I expected something much grander from someone of her background. All this, it's so plain. I pretended not to hear, but their words cut deeper than I admitted. The ink had barely dried on our marriage certificate when the questions about housing began. It was during a typical Sunday dinner at Benjamin and Carla's, Willow on her phone, Dylan playing video games, and Benjamin watching sports on TV. So, Camila, Carla started, casually passing the mashed potatoes, have you talked to your father about buying you two a house? I was just looking at listings there yesterday. A beautiful 6-bedroom with a pool. I nearly choked on my water. Actually, we're planning to save up and buy our place, I managed to say. The room fell silent. Willow paused, fork midair. Benjamin muted the TV and turned to look at me. Carla's face froze into that all-too-familiar artificial smile. They exchanged glances that seemed to convey I'd made a faux pas. But surely your father wouldn't mind, Benjamin started, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. It's just natural for parents to help their kids get started, especially when they can, I responded firmly, yet politely, sitting up straighter. Liam and I want to do this on our own. We're both working, and we plan to save. I believe in earning what you have. Liam reached for my hand under the table, his grip firm but his palms slightly sweaty. I support Camilo on this, he added, although his voice lacked conviction. Besides, my apartment is fine for now. I've been renting it for years. The tension in the room was palpable as Carla's eyes sparkled with what seemed like a sudden epiphany. Setting down her wine glass a bit too forcefully, she proposed, well, if you're staying in the apartment, Camila should cover the rent. After all, she earns quite a bit more than you, Liam. It's only fair. I watched, feeling a sting of discomfort as Liam quickly nodded in agreement. That makes sense, he said, avoiding eye contact. It's $6,000 a month. The amount caught me off guard. Oklahoma City was expensive, but $6,000 seemed steep for our area. Nonetheless, not wanting to stir up any more tension, I agreed lightly. Sure, that's fair. So, it was settled. Each month, I handed over $6,000 to Liam, who would then supposedly handle the rent. Occasionally, I noticed him making the transfer on his phone, swiftly shutting the screen if I approached. This arrangement continued for some time until one evening, a nagging thought interrupted my usual review of our monthly expenses. Over dinner, with the ambient noise of the city wafting through our open window, I ventured, since I'm paying the rent now, maybe we should put the lease in my name? It could be beneficial for tax purposes. Liam's reaction was oddly swift and tense. He nearly dropped his fork onto his half-eaten pasta, and his face lost color. No, that wouldn't work, he replied quickly, his voice unusually high. I've been renting for Mr. Ethan for years. He trusts me. We don't want to upset a good thing. His response unsettled me. The way he couldn't meet my eyes, the tremor in his hands as he reached for his water glass. Despite pushing these doubts aside, life in Oklahoma City had settled into a routine. I was acclimating to my role at the branch office, managing my team well, and maintaining regular video calls with my parents. Everything appeared perfect, except for a recurring issue that increasingly troubled me. It first happened on a Tuesday when I returned home early from work with a headache, only to find Carla and Willow lounging on my couch, watching my TV, and devouring the expensive salmon I had bought for Liam's birthday. Oh, Camila, Carla said nonchalantly, not bothering to rise. We were just having a little snack. I stood frozen, key in hand, as they sat with their shoes on my coffee table, magazines strewn about, and my kitchen in disarray. This intrusion soon became a regular annoyance. I would either come home to find them there or find traces of their visits, like empty food containers or my belongings displaced, my closet evidently rifled through. They had keys, of course. One evening, I attempted to address it with Liam. Honey, don't you think it's strange that your mom and sister just come over whenever they want? He barely glanced up from his phone, dismissive. They're family, Camila. You're being dramatic. Just calm down. But I couldn't just calm down, especially not when I caught them giggling over my college diary they had found in an unpacked box, invading my privacy. Resolutely, I confronted them. We need to talk. This isn't okay. You can't just come into our home uninvited, or rummage through our things. Instantly, Carla's demeanor changed as she burst into tears, playing the victim. How dare you? She cried as if I had wronged her. After everything we've done to welcome you into our family, I knew you were too good for us with your fancy background. As if on cue, Liam entered, witnessing the scene, his mother sobbing, Willow glaring, and me standing my ground, shaken but firm. Standing there in disbelief, I could hardly comprehend the scene unfolding before me. What have you done? He demanded, rushing to console his mother. She's trying to push us away. Carla sobbed into his shoulder, claiming we aren't welcome here anymore. Before I could explain, Liam interrupted. How could you treat them this way? They are my family. After they left, Liam confronted me, his expression more severe than ever. You need to make this right, he instructed sternly. Get them something nice, really nice, and apologize. The next day, I went shopping after work, picking out a designer handbag that Carla had been eyeing and a pair of high-end boots for Willow. I felt a pang of guilt as I wrapped them, questioning my motives. When I delivered the gifts, their acceptance was tinged with arrogance. We knew you'd come around, Carla remarked, barely glancing my way as she admired her new handbag. These will do, Willow chimed in, slipping into her boots. That evening, Liam finally spoke to me, his tone light. See, was that so hard, he said, kissing my cheek. But something felt off, a change I couldn't quite identify yet. Following the incident, things deteriorated further. Carla and Willow mastered the art of gift extortion. Every minor celebration turned into a demand. You know it's National Sister Day next week, Willow would hint, eyeing a luxury item. It's the anniversary of when I first held Liam as a baby, Carla declared another time. A spa weekend seems fitting to commemorate it. The demands became relentless, encompassing Mother's Day, birthdays, Christmas, and even Groundhog Day. When I hesitated over a pricey gift for Arbor Day, Carla broke down at a family dinner. Some people just don't value family loyalty, she cried, while Willow consoled her. Later, Liam confronted me. Why must you be so difficult? They're your family now, too. But when his mother demanded a luxury watch for National Ice Cream Day, I had to speak up. Liam, don't you see this as excessive? He merely shrugged. If you can afford it, why not help the family? As if the financial pressures weren't enough, Dylan, Willow's teenage son, began visiting more frequently. Initially, I tried to be patient, understanding the challenges of adolescence. However, Dylan's disrespect escalated quickly. One evening, after I spent hours preparing a special family recipe, Dylan dismissed the meal with a harsh, "This is garbage." When I denied him money for the movies, he stormed out, accusing me of being miserly on purpose. That night, I attempted to discuss Dylan's behavior with Liam. He was really out of line today. Could you maybe talk to him? I pleaded. Liam, distracted by his phone, replied indifferently, "You need to handle it yourself. Think of it as practice for when we have our kids." The next day, Dylan returned, brazenly demanding money for a new video game. The ongoing disrespect and manipulation were taking a toll, and I realized that something had to change, not just with the gifts, but within our family dynamics. As I declined his request, Dylan sprawled across our couch, cranked up the TV volume to its maximum, and began making snide remarks about fake humble rich people. I turned to my husband, seeking some form of support, but he just walked out of the room, leaving me to deal with his smirking nephew alone. At that moment, feeling isolated in my own home, the loneliness was overwhelming. It's startling how much can change, or how much you can convince yourself things will improve if you just keep trying, remain patient, and continue to give. I'm visiting Mom and Dad this weekend, I mentioned to Liam one morning during breakfast, hoping he might join. He barely looked up from his phone.
Can't.
Promised I'd help them with some things around the house. The drive to my parents' home was tranquil. Mom prepared my favorite lasagna, and Dad cracked his usual dad jokes. For a few precious hours, I felt like the old me, the Camila who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted from life. But peace can be fragile, shattered in an instant. When I returned to our apartment on Sunday evening, the first thing that hit me was the stench: stale beer, pizza, and something fouler. The living room was a disaster zone. Empty beer cans and cigarette butts in solo cups, towers of greasy pizza boxes. Dylan and a handful of teenagers were sprawled across the floor, evidence of a wild party. "Get up," I shouted, my voice trembling with anger. "All of you, out now." The teenagers scrambled to their feet, gathering their belongings, except Dylan, who stretched out lazily and gave me that all-too-familiar smirk. "Why should I leave? I live here now," he declared. My heart sank as he casually mentioned a fallout with his mother and grandmother. Decided this was better than their rules. "Uncle Liam said I could crash here. We rent this apartment, and we have problems," I managed, my voice steady despite my boiling frustration. "Give me your keys now." Dylan laughed, a laugh that pierced through the tension. "Rent this apartment? That's funny. This is Uncle Liam's place. Has been ever since great-grandpa left it to him," he said. My head spun as he continued. "It's always been his. Got it when great-grandpa died 7 years ago. Everyone knows that." I was speechless, gasping for air. 4 years of making rent payments. Every time I had suggested putting the lease in my name, every evasive maneuver he had made, every secretive glance at his phone during those transactions, it had all been a lie. Seeing my distress, Dylan's demeanor shifted from cockiness to something resembling sympathy. "Look," he said awkwardly, patting my shoulder, "there's something else you should know." He pulled out his phone, fumbling with it. "I've been recording some of their conversations. Started doing it when they were talking about me, but, well, they talk about you a lot too." Liam's laugh filled the room from the speaker. "It's perfect," he was saying, $6,000 a month straight into my pocket. She doesn't even question it. My heart sank as Dylan played more recordings, each one unveiling deeper layers of betrayal. As Willow's voice echoed from the recording, boasting about family loyalty and how easily I'd cave, the gravity of their deceit sunk deeper. She got a new designer bag from her last week. She gloated, sure of her manipulation. But it was Carla's voice that cut even sharper. "Just make sure you get her pregnant soon. Once there's a baby, her dad will definitely buy you a house." He wouldn't let his grandchild live in an apartment. The sting of betrayal intensified, yet the worst revelations were still unfolding. Dylan hesitated before playing another clip. Liam's voice, slightly slurred, filled the room. "She's such an idiot, can't even satisfy me in bed. Thank God for Chloe, Marilyn, and what's her name from accounting." Carla's caution followed, her tone casual yet calculating. "Just be careful, honey. Don't let Camila catch you. At least not until we've squeezed every penny we can out of her." The phone nearly slipped through my numb fingers, but Dylan caught it. Could you send those to me?" My voice cracked under the weight of my heartbreak. He nodded and quickly transferred the recordings. As I received the notification, Dylan gathered his belongings. At the door, he paused, turning back with a somber look. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "They're all snakes, you know. Always have been. Even Mom. I guess that's why they dislike me so much. I can't pretend like they do." With a soft click, the door shut behind him, leaving me alone in the trashed apartment, a stark metaphor for my marriage. A beautiful facade hiding nothing but rot underneath. Without bothering to clean up, I got into my car and drove straight to Carla and Benjamin's house, where I knew they would be having their Sunday family dinner. They were all there, gathered around the dining table in a scene that could have been lifted from a Norman Rockwell painting, a false depiction of family unity. As I walked in, Carla's fake smile widened. "Camila, we weren't expecting you. How was your visit with your parents?" Ignoring her, I fixed my gaze on Liam. "Show me the rental agreement for our apartment," I demanded. The room fell silent, Liam's fork freezing midair. "What rental agreement?" he faltered. "The lease." "Show it to me," I insisted. He recovered quickly, flashing that charming smile that once melted my heart. "Oh, honey, Mr. Ethan doesn't do formal contracts. We've known each other for years." "Mr. Ethan doesn't exist," I interrupted sharply. "The apartment belongs to you. It always has." Carla quickly tried to deflect, her voice unnaturally high. "Camila, dear, would you like some pot roast?" "I tried that recipe you mentioned." "Shut up, Carla," I snapped, my voice icy, silencing the room. I had never spoken to them like that before. Turning back to Liam, I pressed on. "What have you been doing with my $6,000 every month for the last 3 years?" He chuckled nervously, sweat beginning to show on his forehead. "Come on, Camila. It's not a big deal. So, I own the apartment. What difference does it make? We're married." "What difference?" I echoed, pulling out my phone. As I played the recordings, Liam's voice filled the room, boasting about the money he pocketed from me without a second thought. The recordings played on, unveiling their schemes and mockery, their plans for exploiting my trust to secure more money from my family. The color drained from their faces, their own words condemning them. As the last echoes of the recordings faded, the room was enveloped in a silence so deep, you could have heard a pin drop. Liam had turned ghost white, Willow seemed on the verge of sickness, and Carla's meticulously applied makeup did little to mask her sheer terror. "I'm divorcing you, Liam," I declared, my voice unwavering. "Expect the papers this week. And if you try to contact me about anything other than the divorce proceedings, I'll make these recordings public." I'm sure the business community would be intrigued to learn how you scammed your wife out of $216,000. Without waiting for their response, I turned and walked out, their feeble protests fading into the background. I drove back to what was technically his apartment and packed my belongings with methodical precision. By sunset, my car was packed, and I was on my way to my parents' house. My parents were still awake when I arrived. One look at my face told them all they needed to know. Something was profoundly wrong. I shared everything with them, playing the damning recordings. My father's expression darkened with each passing moment. "I'll handle this," he assured me after I finished. True to his word, by the next day, Liam had been fired, and my father ensured that his reputation in the business world was left in ruins. The divorce proceedings were swift. Liam initially tried to contest them, but the evidence in the recordings was irrefutable, especially the parts detailing the financial deceit. The judge showed particular interest in the fraudulent transactions. Liam ended up with nothing but his apartment and a tarnished name. For months later, I found myself back at headquarters, immersing myself in work and beginning the slow process of rebuilding my life. It was then that I received a text from Dylan. We agreed to meet for coffee. He appeared changed, more mature, less hostile. "I got a job at the car wash," he shared, "moved out of Mom's place after they discovered I was the one who gave you the recordings. It was the best decision I ever made. I could help you," I offered, "get you a position at the company." He shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. "Thanks, but I need to do this on my own. Clean slate, you know? Besides, I'm saving up for community college." I understood perfectly. Sometimes, the only way forward is to leave everything behind and start anew, building something authentic from scratch. That night, in my new apartment, my real rental, with a legitimate lease in my name, I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was not the one who had fallen for Liam's charms 3 years ago. She was stronger, wiser, and genuinely free at last. I picked up my phone and began deleting their numbers one by one. As the last light of day glinted off the diamond on my ring finger, my grandmother's ring, not the one Liam had given me, it shattered into 1,000 points of light. Outside, the city buzzed with the energy of the evening, ripe with possibilities and new beginnings. I was ready to embrace mine.
A few days later, after finalizing all the necessary paperwork, I packed my bags and departed from my in-laws' home. I informed my mother-in-law that I would be leaving today and bowed to her as a gesture of a grown-up. My mother-in-law grinned at me again. "You've been a lousy wife and a lousy mother from the beginning to the end. You're the worst mother for leaving your kids," she uttered angrily. I don't know how much she can make fun of me, but my daughter and son laughed when they heard what my mother-in-law said. My name is Amelia, a 42-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Grayson, my son Diego, and my daughter Lila. The children have grown up well, and my husband works hard, so we live peacefully without any particular problems. However, things have changed recently. My father-in-law passed away due to illness, and my mother-in-law moved in with us. My husband, who is the only son, felt sorry for his mother being all alone and brought her to our house without consulting us. Are you asking me to abandon my mother who has nowhere to go? My husband said in an accusatory tone, and I had to give in. After that, honestly, it was hell. My mother-in-law had not liked me for a long time, so she would pick on me at every opportunity. Amelia, what is the seasoning? She demanded. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be careful, I replied. And I don't like greasy food, she continued. Well, we have children who are growing up fast, and my husband likes fried food too, I explained. Then please make a separate meal for me. I hope you don't need to make me eat unhealthy food so I die early, she snapped. No, it's not like that. But it would cost more money and it's a bit of a hassle, I reasoned. That's where your skills come in. Grayson earns enough money, so why don't you manage the finances and the hassle? You are so spoiled. When I was young, I took care of the house chores by myself, no matter how hard it was. What a pity that my grandchildren have to live in a house run by such a lazy mother. I feel sorry for them, she criticized. I thought, if you have so much to say, why don't you do it? But I held back, because if I tried to talk back even a little, my husband would get mad at me 100 times over. When I first moved in with my mother-in-law, she was so much of a wife-beater that I objected to her, saying, if you're so opinionated, why don't you do it yourself? Then my mother-in-law told my husband, and he got angry and said to me, how dare you speak to my mother like that when I'm the one supporting you? I thought about getting a divorce, but as a housewife, I wouldn't be able to take care of the children. They are my treasures, and I don't want them taken away from me. So I decided to tolerate my mother-in-law's bullying without objection, but instead of just putting up with it, I started to prepare for a divorce little by little. I applied for jobs at various companies under the watchful eye of my mother-in-law, who was home all day long. Only one company offered me a part-time position. Thanks to my previous experience as a bank clerk, I was able to get a clerical job at a bank. It was my first corporate job in a long time, and it was a lot of fun. Of course, there's a lot of responsibility, and stress came with it. Still, it was more peaceful than seeing my mother-in-law at home all the time. But my mother-in-law didn't like the fact that I was working. Why work when Grayson earns enough salary? Maybe you're looking for a man, she accused me. What kind of thought process is that? A total idiot. And it's not that my husband doesn't make a lot of money, but since his mother-in-law started living with us, it has added to our expenses. So we're not in a situation where we can afford everything. However, my mother-in-law demanded that I provide her with an allowance from now on, so that I wouldn't spend it on men. When I refused and said it was not possible, she again told my husband. When my husband came home from work that night, he yelled at me as he had done before. Are you having an affair? He questioned, accusing me. Huh? I'm not, I replied, shocked. That's what my mother said. She said you're using your part-time salary to pay for men, he insisted. I'm not doing that. Why do you believe your mother's lies? I protested. Shut up, then give her an allowance to prove you're innocent, he demanded. Oh no, I said, feeling defeated. Then my mother-in-law came in with a smirk on her face. $500 a month, she stated. That much? I exclaimed. That's what my mother says, so give it to her, Grayson insisted. In the end, I was defeated by the momentum of the two of them. I had to give most of the money I earned from my part-time job to my mother-in-law as an allowance. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law told the children, "Your mother is a horrible adulterer," with a smirk on her face. Even junior high school kids know what that means, and to tell them a lie like that is just awful. I thought it was not fair at all, and it was ruining me completely. And then something happened to make the situation worse. I found out that my husband was having an affair. Despite suspecting me of infidelity, he was the one having an affair. This put me over the edge, and they say that when you reach your limits, you just blow it all out of the water. I didn't want to spend even 1 second with these jerks, so I immediately went to get the divorce papers. "I don't want to stay in this house after you had an affair," I stated, confronting my husband with the divorce papers. He laughed at me and said, "Well, I don't want an old woman like you in my house." I'm sure that after the divorce, he intends to be with his mistress. He agreed to pay alimony and share the property without any objection. When the children were asked where they wanted to live, they both said they would stay in the house. My mother-in-law grinned at me and said, "I knew you liked your father better than this woman." In a few days, after completing all the formalities, I collected my belongings and left my mother-in-law's house. I told my mother-in-law in the living room that I would be leaving today and bowed to her as a gesture of respect. She grinned at me again and sarcastically said, "You've been a lousy wife and a lousy mother from the beginning to the end. You're such a terrible mother to leave your children." My daughter and son laughed when they heard her comments. She pointed and said, "Look, even the children are laughing at you. What a pathetic mother." "Well, it was actually the children themselves who said they would stay here, so I'm not going to abandon them," I replied. "Oh, I see, so you're a sad woman who was abandoned by her children," she uttered wryly. "Well, you can say what you want, but don't forget that you're responsible for everything at home from now on," I responded. "Huh, don't worry about that. Unlike you, I'm good at everything," she retorted. "I see. Well, then I really must be going now," I said. With that, I left my parents-in-law's house. After that, I went back to my parents' house and threw myself into my work. I asked my work to switch me to full-time, and I took the test to become a full-time employee. Thankfully, I was able to get a full-time job. Now I will be able to take the children with me, and my mother-in-law must be exhausted by now. As I expected, about 3 months after I left home, my mother-in-law contacted me. "Hey, Amelia, help me out," she pleaded. "What's wrong?" I inquired. "I have to take my grandson Diego to and from his soccer team games and help out at a training camp during the summer vacation. On top of that, I'm asked to make his lunchbox early in the morning for the morning practice, and I have to wash his dirty uniforms every day. My granddaughter Lila also goes to cram school every day, so I have to drive her back and forth. On top of that, I have to do the housework all by myself. Grayson says he's tired from work and doesn't do anything to help me," she complained. "Well, if you're just complaining, I'm hanging up now," I pressed. "Wait, I'm calling you because I want you to help me, Amelia," she kept begging. "Excuse me, I'm already divorced, so it doesn't concern me," I responded. "Don't say that, please," my mother-in-law didn't stop. "No, I won't go back, but I understand that you're in a situation that you cannot handle by yourself. I cannot entrust my precious children to you. I will pick them up," I stated. "But they want to stay here," she protested. "That's because they wanted you to understand how hard I was working," I explained. "What?" she asked, confused. "Yes, in fact, when I decided to get divorced, the first thing I did was talk to the children. They said they would follow me right away. Lila, my daughter, said, 'But this means that grandmother and the others are just kicking you out, right, Mom?' Then my son added, 'I don't like that. We know how hard you work, Mom.' The children decided to remain at home initially, so that the grandmother would experience all the difficulties their mother faced. I was so happy that they were on my side. I made up my mind that I would make enough money, so I could come to bring them home," I explained. "Well then," she stammered. "Yes, everything was according to our plan. I'm now a full-time employee and I'll take the kids, I stated firmly. Oh no, she muttered. I then hired a lawyer and demanded that custody be transferred. The children wanted to live with me, so custody was easily transferred. When I reported the affair to the company, his boss was amazed to hear it, and my husband was transferred to a department where he would not be able to advance in his career. Because of this, he can no longer pay the mortgage on the house he currently lives in. My mother-in-law has been ordered to work as well. My ex-mother-in-law is furious that her son is telling her what to do. My ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law are blaming each other. They'll probably have to leave the house this way. Well, it's none of my business anymore. Meanwhile, I rented an apartment and moved in with my children. They are growing up to be wonderful children. My daughter cooks and my son helps me with laundry and cleaning. I want to be able to support them to do whatever they want to do in the future, so I will continue to work hard and earn money. My name is Violet. Today is the most important day of my life, as I get to marry the love of my life, Nolan. We dated for 3 years, and today we went to City Hall to register our marriage first thing in the morning. Then we headed straight to the wedding venue. I had been waiting for this day for so long. Luckily, both my parents and Nolan's parents are not the kind of people who interfere in our lives, and they supported our decision to get married from the beginning. My mother in particular said, "Do whatever you want. I support you." Nolan is such a kind person who always puts me first. He helps me when I'm in trouble and supports me when I make mistakes. Nolan has consistently stood by me, offering kindness in moments of need and unwavering strength when required. That's why I immediately said yes when he proposed. I had no reason to hesitate because I owe everything to him. We received blessings from both families, friends, and colleagues at our wedding. We felt like the happiest couple in the world. I tasted the ultimate happiness and was filled with hope for our married life together. Every day since I married Nolan has been really happy. We found an apartment not far from our parents' homes, and I'm grateful that we have a good relationship with our in-laws, especially my mother-in-law, who always cared about me. I grew to love her and enjoyed spending time with her, but I never thought it would come to this. A few months after marrying Nolan, I finished my part-time job and returned home to prepare dinner. Just as it was almost ready, Nolan came home at the perfect time. "Welcome home, Nolan. How was your day?" I greeted him. Something seemed off about Nolan. Normally, he would loudly say, "I'm home," but today he didn't. I leaned in closer and saw his face was pale with sunken eyes. "Wait, something's wrong. Are you feeling okay?" Worried, I asked. Nolan slowly opened his mouth and spoke in a small voice. "My mom. She fell down the stairs. My dad just called." Suddenly it felt like time stood still. "Huh? Your mother?" I asked again in horror. According to what Nolan told me, his mother slipped on the stairs at their house and fell. She was conscious, but had lost all sensation in her right leg. "How did that happen?" I inquired. The fact that his lively and energetic mother had become unable to walk was shocking. I was devastated. Of course, Nolan had always assumed it wouldn't easily affect him either, but I loved his mother just as much as he did. I cherished her as if she were my own mother. That's why it hit me so hard. I paused in the middle of preparing dinner and talked to Nolan. "Your father doesn't seem to be in great shape either. I'm worried about your mother. Is she okay?" I asked him gently. "It's hard to say right now, but my brother and his wife also live with my parents," Nolan replied. Nolan has an older brother named Bo. Bo is married to a woman named Leilani, and they live together with Nolan's parents. But I couldn't imagine Leilani taking care of my mother-in-law. I know it's not right to think like this, but I didn't get along well with Leilani. The first time I visited Nolan's parents' house, I began to feel that way. We were still engaged, not yet married. His parents and his brother Bo welcomed me warmly, and I had a really good time. But during our lively conversations, Leilani didn't utter a single word. When I excused myself to use the restroom, Leilani said, "Let me show you the way," and led me there. She seemed to be just a quiet person, but then she suddenly said, "So, how does it feel to be showered with attention? Enjoying yourself?" I was taken aback. I didn't know how to respond. "Well, let me make it clear. Nobody here is welcoming you. They're all just putting on a show, so don't forget to keep that in mind, okay?" she added. With that, she went back to the living room where everyone else was. I stood there dumbfounded. On the way home, I discussed the incident with Nolan, who seemed to agree. "Yeah, I've heard some things about my brother's wife. She is just too straightforward in her personality and blunt. She always wants to compare herself to others," he said. As I listened to his words, I strangely found myself understanding. At the same time, I became convinced that she wasn't someone I could get along with. Thinking back on those old memories, I decided to go to Nolan's parents' house with him. His father had said, "I want to have a proper conversation with everyone once," so we headed to his parents' house on our day off. When we arrived, Nolan's mother was still in the hospital, so his father greeted us. As we walked towards the living room, Leilani, as expected, glared at me. Feeling awkward, I instinctively avoided her gaze. "Please have a seat," his father said. Nolan and I took our seats. "Today is about none other than your mother," he began, explaining the current state of Nolan's mother. "She is conscious and able to have normal conversations, and her life is not in immediate danger. However, she still has no feeling in her right leg, and there is a possibility she might end up bedridden," he explained. As I listened to the conversation, tears welled up. I knew it. But to see my mother-in-law, who was so lively before, end up like this, would we no longer be able to go out together? Such thought weighed heavily on my chest. Looking around, Nolan and Bo were also visibly shocked, their heads hanging low. However, amidst them all, Leilani was the only one looking at her smartphone, seemingly oblivious to her father-in-law's words. "Is she not be able to come back home anymore?" I asked, breaking the silence. Nolan's father turned towards me and said, "No. It seems the hospital policy doesn't allow them to treat bedridden patients at home. My wife is conscious, and besides her right leg, there aren't any other major issues. I'll likely be home caring for her, so she'll receive home care," he concluded. As I looked down, Nolan's father encouraged me with his words. "Well, Violet, if they say she'll be bedridden for the rest of her life, it doesn't seem like it will be the case," he tried to cheer me up. "Is that so?" I asked with hope in my voice. "According to the doctor, it seems she had a bone injury. They say that with good rehabilitation, there is a good chance she'll improve over time," he uttered with a gentle smile. "I see," I replied, feeling tears build up and escape from my eyes. Meanwhile, Nolan and Bo were discussing the details of their mother's condition with their father. As I glanced all round, I felt a gaze and noticed Leilani glaring at me once again. "Hypocrite," Leilani muttered those words quietly, but they were audible enough for me to hear. Feeling uneasy, I looked double once more. Then, Nolan's father brought up the conversation again. "Okay, I'll take care of my wife, but if anything happens, I want everyone to cooperate," he said. "Of course," Nolan replied. "Absolutely," I added. As Nolan and I replied, Leilani interjected with a loud voice. Everyone's gaze natural shifted towards Leilani. "I've been thinking," she began, and looking at me added, "Violet, let's take care of your mother-in-law together." She suddenly brought up such a thing. "Huh?" I said. "What? You don't like it?" she questioned. After my puzzled reaction to her unexpected suggestion, I continued to explain. "No, it's not that I don't like it. It's true that our father-in-law's back isn't in great shape, so it would be better if we—" I didn't say enough. Then it settled. Leilani interrupted me. It would be difficult to come here every day, so why not live together at this point? She suggested. Huh? I said. Leilani kept pushing the conversation forward without considering my feelings, and I started to panic. Bo, who had been listening, said, Hey, isn't that too sudden? It's troublesome to be told all of a sudden, right? But Leilani replied, But caregiving is a 24-hour job, right? It would be tough to come here every day, don't you agree? She looked at me as she said that. Certainly, living together will be easier, I agreed. As I said that, my husband uttered, It's up to Violet to decide. I'll support and help in any way. Shall we live together? And so, as Leilani insisted, we ended up living together at my in-laws' place. Moving day, since Nolan was at work, I was supposed to go to my in-laws' house first. It seemed that my father-in-law had gone to pick up my mother-in-law, so the one who greeted me was Leilani. Oh, you're here, saying that Leilani didn't change her expression. To such Leilani I said, Nice to meet you, I'm starting today. To which she replied, Quickly put down your belongings and clean up my mother-in-law's room. You'll take care of everything. I was surprised by her words. Huh? Leilani, everything? I thought caregiving would be on a rotating basis between you and me, I replied. You are so annoying. You are at the bottom of the hierarchy, so shut up and do as you are told, she stated. Not used to this kind of situation, I quickly apologized. I'm sorry. Geez, my sister-in-law Leilani uttered, and she returned to the living room, starting to watch TV and drink tea by herself. I hurriedly unpacked my belongings as instructed and cleaned up my mother-in-law's room. At that moment, the doorbell rang, and it was my father-in-law and mother-in-law returning home. Welcome back, mother-in-law, I said. Then Leilani pushed me aside. Actually, I was in the middle of cleaning my mother-in-law's room, she stated. A few days passed, and I needed to stop by the bank. Wait a minute, Leilani called out to me from behind. Where are you going? She continued. I'm going to the bank to deposit some money, I responded. What about taking care of your mother-in-law? Do it properly, she asked me. But it's your turn today, right? I'm always changing my schedule for you, and I don't even have time to go outside, I tried to object. I don't know about that. Just do it quickly. I'm the one going out now, Leilani said as she grabbed her bag and left. Unfortunately, my father-in-law also had a community gathering today and wouldn't be back until evening. I couldn't just leave my mother-in-law alone, so I gave up on going to the bank and stayed at home. From then on, Leilani never took care of the situation, and I was Bernard every day. Feeling fed up, I decided to consult my father-in-law. It seemed that my father-in-law had spoken to Leilani because she came to me and apologized under his influence. I'm sorry, Violet. I've been relying on you too much, she said while shedding tears. Seeing her in a state I couldn't imagine from her usual self, I felt a little scared, but hoped this would be an opportunity for her to change. However, a few days later, while I was cleaning the house, Leilani confronted me. You snitched on me, and now I got scolded by your father-in-law. It's all your fault. Will you apologize? She demanded. Seeing that Leilani didn't reflect on her actions at all made me angry. Stop placing the blame on others, I firmly said and added, I won't apologize. I made it clear. Leilani momentarily looked surprised at my definite attitude, but quickly regained her composure and said, Violet, you are really annoying. Just leave already. Saying that, Leilani burst into laughter. At that moment, I felt something inside of me go cold. Understood. I'll gladly leave, I said as I walked past her and tended to my room, packed my things, and left my in-laws' house. While I was getting ready, Leilani made a lot of noise, but I ignored it all. When leaving my in-laws' house, it seemed like she was shouting horrible things, but I didn't respond and just walked out. After a while, I received a call from my husband. Apparently, he was worried because I wasn't home, so he decided to call. When he asked Leilani about my whereabouts, she left him hanging. That's all she said, so I told him everything. As a result, Leilani's true nature was exposed, and both my father-in-law and Bo became furious with her. Bo asked her to apologize to me, but Leilani replied, "Why should I apologize?" Hearing this, my father-in-law, who was listening, got angry and said, "Violet has been providing most of the care expenses for her mother. I didn't notice, and I was at fault, but I never thought Leilani could be so despicable." He expressed his anger. Yes, even though it was just a small amount, I had been giving money to my mother-in-law every month, hoping it would help her. I hadn't even told Bo about this, so he was quite surprised. In the end, Bo had enough and said, "We are getting a divorce. Get out of here." As a result, Bo kicked Leilani out of the house. I don't know where Leilani went after that. I received a request from my mother-in-law to come back, so I decided to return to my in-laws' house. Even though Leilani was no longer there, and the caregiving was by no means easy, my mother-in-law's condition improved day by day, and now she can even walk with the help of a cane. Bo still seems to feel inferior to me. "If there is anything troubling you, please let me know," he said me. He actively helps with household chores as well. My husband Nolan also supports me more than ever, so living at my in-laws' house is no longer a burden at all. I feel no sympathy for Leilani. It's her own doing, and she deserves it. I'll make sure not to end up like her. With that in my mind, I live my life every day.